Hello and welcome to another episode of the SASE Show with Sid. As you can see, we're coming to you today from bright and sunny Sydney, Australia. And I'm really excited to introduce my guest for today, my colleague and good friend, Riccardo Galbiati, Field CTO for Australia and New Zealand at Palo Alto Networks. Riccardo, welcome to the SASE Show.
Thank you for having me, Sid. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, we couldn't pass up the opportunity. We were in the same city. We've been planning this for so many months. And with a beautiful view, what could be better?
Yeah, the weather really put it up for us.
So I'm looking forward to the conversation. We're talking about SASE, and it's an acronym like one of the many acronyms in the industry. So how does the Australian market feel about SASE as an acronyms and acronyms in general?
Yeah, that's interesting. So since I moved here, I had to get used to a lot of acronyms. I would say, like in Australia, they love the acronyms and abbreviations, by the way. So getting used to, not being caught out on RBT, the remote testing, or those kind of things. But they also love, as I said, abbreviations. Like, did you know what a barbie is in Australia?
Barbecue?
Yeah, of course. Okay. See, they became world renowned, I'd say, these kind of slangs. But in terms of SASE specifically, it is not probably as well understood as a general terminology in Australia, I would say. SASE, again, it belongs to those buzzwords used in cybersecurity like zero trust, ZTNA, and all those kind of short form terminologies that can get quite confused with each other. I have found that after we explain the definition normally of each one of the letters, what does it mean to be secure? What does it mean to give access? What does it mean to do it from a service edge perspective? Then people start connecting the dots and really figuring out, oh, okay, that's what you mean. I'm somehow on that journey. But they haven't really fully embraced the SASE architecture yet, I think.
So during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, and who would have thought a year ago that you and I would be sitting across each other with this beautiful view behind us talking about SASE in person, right? But during the COVID-19 pandemic and the entire journey that organizations went through, could you share some context for the audience? What was the market like in Australia with companies embracing remote work and cloud, and how that relates to SASE perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, like probably every other organization around the world, we were kind of caught out as a country and had to switch very quickly to that hybrid or fully remote workforce. And I think the typical approach has been, let's fix what we can as soon as possible, find an alternative to the VPN access that is just not scaling, and it's causing us so many trouble and outages because people cannot access their applications and data anytime. So that has been a little bit of, let's say, tactical approach in solving the issue, which makes sense. Where you're in a rush, you need to move quick, and you can't really plan long term. That has been my experience. So in most cases, I'd say customers have selected technology for the short period that could give them a 6 month of guaranteed connectivity. But then over time, we went through the phase of survive and then optimize. We're now at the phase of optimization. So companies have realized that maybe the initial selection they have done is not fit for purpose on the long run. And so they are considering how to embed additional components to it, or maybe switch to an architecture that can support them long term. In particular, I would say that the most successful companies were the ones that had some sort of resilience to the initial hit of the remote workforce being pushed on them, and could plan maybe by breaking down the silos that they had internally between network departments, security departments, and even user experience. One of the most successful stories probably from Australia is one of a financial institution that was able to literally sit down with these three groups in a room and come up with a common use case to solve the problems of each one of them and find SASE as the answer to that challenge.
That's interesting. There seems to be a kind of a trend right now that I'm seeing in the last 2 weeks that we've spent meeting organizations and having the collaborative discussions that we've had. There seems to be two streams of thought. One is to consolidate the security components and the networking components with using architectures like SASE, and the other stream of thought is let's keep these things individual capabilities because we want to focus on the way we've been doing it. Do you feel like the market is going one way or the other, or like how are you seeing that evolve?
I think it definitely comes from a mentality of the best of breed approach. I mean, everyone tends to try to come up with the most logical solution, as I said at the beginning, and picking the best of the bunch that they think is the best of the bunch, but then realize that they need something to complement that, and keep picking on best of breed approaches is not going to survive the long term. To be honest, Sid, we've been there before, right? In network security, over 15 years ago, we realized that we were running too many best of breed products in the network. So I don't see a lot of difference in that approach to how organizations are doing that now with that SASE one, so going to clouds or using the cloud to secure their workloads and access to data and applications, but doing it on a piecemeal approach. And then eventually realizing, actually, if we went down the platform approach instead of the best of breed, or maybe the best of suite approach, which is picking best of breed capabilities but combining them into a unified platform, that's the one that is going to outlast all of the other ones at the same time. So the mindset is shifting, definitely. I can see that. There's still a long road, I'd say, before people realize that platforms are here to stay, as opposed to going down the best of breed approach of capabilities, but it's happening.
Yeah, and I feel like it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? The evaluation has to be done, but just because capabilities are consolidated, that doesn't mean that organizations should necessarily compromise on the individual strengths of those capabilities either, right? And I think one of the things that I've seen resonating is that organizations, now that apps are moving to the cloud, users are remote, they want to treat all applications with an equal level of security and not have implicit trust and do less security for internal applications, whether they're in the data center or in a cloud service provider, just because they're internal. So that idea of removing that implicit trust, I think it really helps, and architectures like SASE or the security component of SASE SSE really helps with the zero trust mission. Would you agree with that statement? Or?
Well, Sid, I'm a great supporter of zero trust and a believer, I would say, in the theory and the strategy behind it. Absolutely. So uniforming the use cases is one of the major advantages of going with a SASE architecture. So you don't need to think anymore, we're accessing applications privately, so we need a product for that and some capabilities. But then if we're going out to the internet, the capabilities should change. That's exactly what attackers want. They want you to have a gap in your approach to protecting different paths and different direction of traffic, and use that gap to exploit that trust. Funnily enough, I think in one of the meetings that we recently had, one organization was telling us, I do really want a zero trust approach, and my laptops have to be fully protected when they converse to applications. But then we can trust some traffic that goes to, directly to Microsoft services or Office 365, that's trusted, right? It's like, well, you realize that you're just broken the promise of zero trust by saying that.
Yeah.
So that approach of split tunneling, for example, is quite common still in the mentality of organizations, and they don't realize they are introducing so much weaknesses by splitting away from that constant layer that SASE should be, always sitting between users and their destinations.
There is another stream of thought or conversations that I've had which say that SASE is just, you're just packaging stuff that you were doing on premises, but now delivered as a cloud-based service. So there is no net new capabilities. But I tend to see the user experience improvements, like digital experience management, as a lot of net new capabilities that SASE architectures add. So have you seen that come up in conversations, with customers and security leaders and IT leaders here around the user experience improvements that something like SASE can give?
Yes. I've seen it from both ends, to be honest. Some perceptions have been that when they adopted an initial SASE so-called solution, they had major user experiences drawbacks. And some applications were not accessible at all because they were not designed to be supported by the hypothetical SASE architecture. And I'm talking about legacy or specific applications that, for example, don't support dynamic ports or server-to-client type of connectivity, and creating lots of problems that were not predictable when they deployed the solution initially. But the focus has been clearly in going, we need a solution that not only solves our security and connectivity issues, but also doesn't impede the work of our employees. So that focus has had to be put there, because if not, we know when a user is obstructed in their work, they tend to go around the obstacle, and that means avoiding using the solution or finding ways to dodge the controls. interestingly enough, going back to that use case that I mentioned before about the financial institution, they wanted the user experience team to be fully involved in the process. So they actually gave us a use case of an employee getting up in the morning and all the challenges they were facing when trying to work remotely. All the tickets that they had to open when they were accessing an application that wasn't available, all the slowness of connectivity towards some applications, and then says we need to solve all these while also making sure that they connect and they are secured. So embedding user experience capabilities within SASE is absolutely topical and critical in my opinion.
Yeah, and that kind of makes it a business conversation and a boardroom conversation because, having been in the network security industry for so many years, you've seen that the network security conversation never made it to the boardroom. Like it never made it to the business conversation. But now by doing network security in the cloud, we are able to light up the dashboards to give visibility about how applications are performing for individual users. Interestingly, I was having a conversation with a C-level executive last week, and they were telling me that, they want to be able to figure out what the packet flow is from the user all the way to the application, so that when the user calls the IT team, and it's always the network, right? Your network is down. But if you have the visibility using the cloud-based metrics and telemetry to be able to say, no, you know what? It's your home Wi-Fi, or it's your local ISP, or it's a problem with the SaaS application. It's not my network. And that does two things, right? One, it helps to diagnose and triangulate the problem. It also leads to mean time to innocence being reduced for the networking teams and saves a lot of cost and efficiency as well. So I think there's a lot of, in a geographically distributed country like Australia and also even New Zealand, right? I think those kinds of improvements are pretty useful, tangible benefits.
Majorly. As you said, Sid, all you want is reduce the workload as well onto the supporting team to these new solutions that they maybe have just deployed a SASE architecture and they're like facing all these new challenges from a user experience perspective, and they should go away. You want, in fact, users themselves to try and sort out their user experiences problem in some cases. So even recommending them, hey, if you move closer to your wireless router or if you reset your wireless router, you're going to get a better experience. Or maybe you're just using too many resources on your device. Your tabs in Chrome are, or on your favorite web browser are sprawling. Try reducing that and you'll see the user experience improve. That will save the ticket being opened, service desk investigation, and all these kind of activities that can be fully, let's say, taken care of in a self-service manner.
Yeah, for sure. And another interesting anecdote, I think we were discussing this over lunch the other day as well, is this happened to one of our employees at Palo Alto Networks. We also leveraged this capability for user experience improvements internally, right? So they were sitting in the office and they assumed that they were connected to the corporate network, therefore they should have the best experience, but they were facing issues. So they picked up the phone, called up the IT team and said, I can't access my applications or it's very slow. And within 10 seconds or 15 seconds, the IT team was able to inform the user that you're not connected to the corporate SSID. What was happening was they were connected to their neighbor's mobile hotspot because they had gone on a business trip the previous week and they had shared mobile hotspots. So it wasn't connected to the right SSID. So it was able to solve the problem very quickly instead of having an engineer come to the desk, try to figure out configuration. So I think it just makes life a lot easier, right, in a lot of ways. I wanted to ask you, Riccardo, about this trend towards single vendor SASE. And Gartner, which was the originator of the whole SASE architecture back in 2019, which has now taken off big time, they've recently come out with an update where they've spoken about single vendor SASE, which includes the SD-WAN and security integration, same management console. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means for the Australia and New Zealand audience?
Yes, I think Gartner tends to do these type of exercises about market research in new technology or ways of assembling technology and maybe giving them a new name. As you know, most of the acronyms in the industry come from Gartner. And they've released this interesting research that demonstrates that they already see organizations working towards the consolidation that we talk about SASE, but not so much as some of its parts. Again, going down let's get the best product that does ZTNA and combine it with the best product that does secure web gateway and then call that SASE in combination with some SD-WAN from a third party, but more consolidating at a single vendor approach. And the market research they've done is quite interesting. They estimate that by 2025, over 80% of organizations will be looking into consolidating all these use cases into a single SASE vendor. Normally, that also is a precursor to a quadrant, which I think we have way too many magic quadrants already today. But at the moment, they don't have a full SASE quadrant that includes the A, and that refers normally to the access or the network component that leads traffic to the SASE architecture, including SD-WAN, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or two we would have a full SASE quadrant and maybe a specific single vendor SASE, because every organization realizes that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think the benefits, quadrant notwithstanding, may or may not happen. We'll see, but the trend is important. The statistics you quoted earlier in terms of predictions, because the efficiencies that it gives in terms of having a single management console for networking and security, having a unified data lake, having a unified data model, these are very, very real benefits. Having common application identification at the branch and in your security inspection. It's not just procuring SD-WAN and cloud delivered security from the same vendor, but it's the research paper, which is, by the way, available on our website for download. We'll put it in the description of this video for those that are interested. But the actual tangible integration, I think it's creating another level of definition in the market, which actually filters out the vendors that can do SD-WAN well, and do security well, but also offer that in an integrated fashion, right? So there's so many vendors. Every vendor is a SASE SSE vendor today, right? I see it as a way for customers to think about how the market is evolving. So I think you raised some great points there for the
absolutely. It's
local market also.
Once more, is the empowering of the best of suite approach as opposed to the best of breed approach. It's 1 + 1 = 3. You can say in so many other ways. Yeah. But that joint connectivity, the intelligence sharing that you're mentioning about, is quite unique in the market. For example, on how we are doing it, and it's the way that even a big market research firm like Gartner is seeing the move shifting to. So,
interesting. What would be the one piece of advice, Riccardo, you would have for organizations in Australia and New Zealand, or even more generally across the region, as they start thinking about securing the hybrid workforce and SASE and these kind of things? How should they get started? What's your advice to them?
Well, I think, as I said, some of them are in the position where they're still having to make a decision about what to do about SASE. They might have been lucky to survive through the heat or the highest problems during the pandemic with their current solutions, and they're now making a decision. And for them, it's all about choosing the right architecture, starting with the right architecture at the beginning to move on and evolve in additional use cases. So let's say select a SASE architecture that can support their current remote access workforce without considering the future need that we'll have for SD-WAN, which might be on a different contract, on a different time frame of deployment, but knowing that they can get there. So an architecture that is built to last is the first choice. And then there are the other ones that instead maybe have made a rash decision and they've gone down a path of selecting whatever could keep them in business at the time. So for them, it's mostly, I'd say, if they realize they can't expand or build their architecture from that starting point, because maybe the features that combine are not that natively integrated, pick a second use case that you're moving to and then select the right architecture for that. So eventually you'll be able to integrate your initial choice into this new architecture and again, continue managing it and grow it for the longest possible time.
Very sensible, practical advice. And look, given the view and the great company that I have, we could keep talking all day.
Yes.
But we do need to wrap up. Before I let you go, Riccardo, there's a question I've been asking all my guests, as frequent watchers of the show would know, and you would know as well, which is, do you have a favorite movie? It doesn't have to be cybersecurity related, but which one would you pick?
Yeah, good question. I have a lot of favorite movies, and I need to fight in my head to pick my favorite. Probably, I'd say, let's stick to Interstellar. Yeah, I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek, and obviously I've been looking or thinking in my head which one is my favorite sci-fi movie. I think Interstellar has been. I don't tend to rewatch movies a lot, and I think I've watched it about 7 times. So that must be a good sign that tells me it's one of my favorite movies for sure.
Yeah, interesting. I've watched it many times as well for the movie soundtrack, which is great, right?
Love it.
I think it was Hans Zimmer. I don't know if it was right? But since you watched it so many times, as have I still haven't been able to figure out when he folds that piece of paper and he puts a pencil through it, and that's supposed to explain how time travel happens. I still haven't figured it out. So maybe once we wrap up the show, we can go have lunch and you can explain it to me.
We can talk about wormholes all day.
All right. Riccardo, thanks again for spending the time. It's a pleasure to have you on the SASE show, and I'm glad we could do this with such beautiful weather and a beautiful location. I'm sure the audience found our discussion very valuable, as did I. So thank you for being a guest. I hope you enjoyed your time on the SASE show.
I definitely did. We can do this anytime again. Thank you, Sid.
I see another episode in our future somewhere.
For sure.
Thanks, Riccardo. And to our audience, thanks again for your attention. If you want to continue to stay engaged with us, with Riccardo, his bio is going to be in the description of the video. And until next time, this is your host, Sid, signing off with the SASE show. Thanks for your time.